Today, I'm going to bring you 7 tips to help you increase your breast milk production. Ideally, you would put your baby to the breast every time they demanded, and your body would supply what they needed. But sometimes we need a little bit of help finding out why we're not making enough milk, or making a little bit of extra to stash it away for when we go back to work. My first important tip is to check the latch. If you're breastfeeding your baby, look down when they've come unlatched and see, what does your breast look like? What does your nipple look like? Breastfeeding should be comfortable, even from day one. So if you're feeling like there's some friction causing an injury or some discomfort, it's worth investigating to find out if you can get comfortable sooner. When your baby's breastfeeding, you should be able to hear some active drinking noises. This often looks like a pattern similar to this. Suck, suck, swallow, breathe. Suck, suck, swallow, breathe. And it often sounds like this. Sometimes there'll be 3 instead of 2. You should hear swallowing in a rhythmic pattern with periods of rest in between. My second tip is to check your nipple shape after your baby comes unlatched. So actually tip your breast up a little bit and take a look at your nipple. Is it round at the base, or is it pinched flat? Is it beveled or slanted like a brand new lipstick tube when you turn it up? Or does it have a white compression line or a scab on the end? These are all signs that your baby may be having a shallow latch, and if you can get them on deeper, you might find more comfort. Some helpful signs to look for that your baby's getting enough to eat. They're having enough wet and dirty diapers every day. At least 5 or 6 wet diapers and 3 or 4 stools for the first 4 to 6 weeks. After the first month, some infants do reduce their stooling frequency, but they should still stool every day. And most importantly is that they're comfortable when they go, that they go frequently, and that they stay on track with their growth curve. My next tip is to check your pump parts. The white moving pieces to your pump should be changed once a month, and usually your insurance covers this. On a Spectra, this is called a backflow protector, and we want to change this white piece in the middle. We also want to wash it after every pump. So if you've been leaving it attached to your pump, be sure to take it off. This membrane is what keeps milk from spraying down the tube and getting pulled up into the motor. This means that milk is getting on the membrane and that it can mold and get dirty very quickly. This is the piece that you'd want to change, along with this piece. This piece really provides all of the suction to your pump. I also recommend that you assess the efficiency of your pump and your flange fit, making sure that you're on something that's comfortable and effective and that you'll want to use is very important. I personally really like Spectras. I think that they're high quality pumps that deliver consistently time and time again. And I really don't think that someone that's pumping either full-time or that's going to go back to work can even have just one pump. What if your pump dies in the middle of the night or while you're at work and you're scrambling to figure out how to get another one or how they work, or if your pump parts are going to fit or go together? I think it's really just better to go ahead and have 2 options that you know how to use and that you feel comfortable with, so that you have a backup. Pumps can come in a variety of sizes. They can be as big as the Spectra, or they can be as small as, if not smaller than, the pumpables. Your flange fit is very important. Pumping in the wrong size flange will leave you with less than desirable results in both output and comfort. Most pumps come with a 24 or a 28 millimeter flange, but most women are just a 15 to a 17 millimeter nipple. By using a ruler, we can measure the diameter of your nipple and find a roundabout of where to start. Take this and set it on your nipple and pull it over to the side just a little bit. So you can put your finger in, or your nipple as the case may be, and pull it over, and you can see that there's still space. So that's not the size of my finger. I need to try the next size. Okay, getting better. So this one actually is the size of my finger, which is a 15 millimeter. So in order to find a flange size, you would add 1 to 2 millimeters to whatever your nipple measured, and that would be a good starting flange size to try. So in this instance, my finger, which was my nipple, measured 15 millimeters, so I should try a 16 or a 17 millimeter flange. Many clients like to use a hard plastic flange over an insert because they can see better. They can tell what's going on. They can monitor when they need to turn up their settings or change back and forth between modes because they can very clearly see the sprays from their letdown happening in the pump tunnel. With wearable cups or flanges or inserts that are opaque, it can be very hard to see inside the tunnel, and so you really are then going by feel instead of what it looks like. You would monitor output by the milk that actually is dropping down into the bottle instead of watching the sprays from the top if you needed to. An insert goes inside your 24 flange, and then they just make them the correct size. So for instance, this insert is a 15 millimeter. And so if someone measured a 13 or 14 millimeter nipple, then they might try a 15 millimeter insert or pump flange as a starting point. And so it just goes right in there. And it makes it smaller. This is going to increase your production and your output. It's going to make it so that you can pump on a lower setting and get the same results, or maybe even better. Because when your flange doesn't fit right, you're going to turn the pump up to compensate for it. And turning the pump up to compensate is just going to leave you feeling sore and desensitized. And that's a great topic to talk about, the settings on your pump. Maximizing your milk output by playing with your pump settings. Regardless of the kind of pump you have, you should play with the settings, the fast mode or stimulate, and the expression mode, which is usually a little bit slower. The stimulate mode often runs upwards of 70 tugs per 60 seconds. This means that the tugs are very light and short, and they won't feel as intense. This is very helpful if you're early postpartum or if you're sore for any other reason. After milk starts flowing though, you can switch over into the expression mode, and this will help to pull in longer pulls to pull milk while it's actually being expressed. But what if after 5 or 10 minutes, your milk stops flowing? Then you should treat this like washing your hair. Lather, rinse, repeat. Go ahead and go back into the fast mode. Stay there for 2 or 3 minutes or until you see milk start flowing again. When you see that happen, you can click the button and go back into the expression mode and turn it up another 1 or 2 as is comfortable. As you pump, if you start on the highest settings that your pump will go to, you won't have anywhere else to go when you can't feel it anymore. If you start down on a lower level and turn it back down every time, you'll have more levels to climb up of vibration and of intensity so that you can continue feeling the action of the breast pump for the duration of you using it. My 4th tip is to stimulate your breasts frequently enough. A breastfed baby needs to nurse 8 to 12 times a day, and more importantly, a breastfeeding mom typically needs 8 stimulations per day minimum to maintain a healthy milk supply. So if your baby is breastfeeding 7 or 8 times a day and you would like to increase your milk supply, It may be as simple as just breastfeeding them more times per day. I really like to drive home here to do as much as you can during the day when the sun is up. Although night feedings are important and healthy, it's also ideal if we could fit more of them in during the day so that less of them happened at night and we could enjoy sleeping a little bit more. If your baby is already breastfeeding 10 to 12 times a day and you do not have enough milk, perhaps you are supplementing with donor milk or with formula currently. Maybe you're already breastfeeding 12 times a day. If you're already breastfeeding 12 times a day and your baby is not gaining enough weight, then that may be cluing us into the fact that they may not be efficiently transferring milk at each feeding to keep increasing your milk supply, or at least maintain the one that you've built up. If your baby's not able to remove enough milk from your breast at each feeding, you may need to pump after and remove the milk that they're leaving behind to tell your body, hey, I need all of that milk. The baby needs all of that milk. Please continue making it. Or expressing past the point of not seeing any more milk coming out, not having any more letdowns. That's telling the body the baby drank everything and they're still hungry. So I would really like it if you would make more. Power pumping can be helpful, but it can't take the replacement of frequent good stimulation. Power pumping is meant to simulate cluster feeding, which babies typically do once or twice a day. Very frequently it's in the early evening, sometime around 4 or 5 o'clock to maybe 9 or 10. This is the time biologically when your breast milk supply is lower than it is in the morning. And so it's very normal for babies to want to kind of tank up on some high hind fat milk before hopefully having a little stretch of sleep in the evening. But if someone comes to me and they say, Jessica, I am pumping every day, but I can't get more than 18 ounces a day. I would really love to provide all of my baby's breast milk. And they say to me, I'm pumping for 30 minutes 6 times a day. They are pumping plenty of minutes per day to be successful, but they will likely be more successful with raising their supply if they just separate those minutes that they're already doing a little differently in their day. By increasing the frequency, this tells your body that the demand is more frequent. And so the supply should increase in response. So people often say supply and demand, but really it's demand and supply. There can be a delay in when you start doing something and when you actually start seeing results with pumping and breastfeeding. So think back to the day that your baby was born. Is your milk supply today what it was on the day that your baby was born? Or on day 3? Or on day 5? Or even at the end of 2 weeks? If you're over a month postpartum, your supply is probably a lot higher than it ever was at the beginning. And it took up to 2 to 5 weeks to get there. And so if you've made some changes to your breastfeeding or pumping situation, give yourself a little time. I like to always give at least a week at a time to just look back retrospectively. Is the things that I'm doing this week helping to increase my supply? Are they worth doing for another week? And so answer those questions personally and then plan to go for another week, but don't throw in the towel until it's been 2, 3, 4, or even 5 weeks after making significant changes to your breastfeeding plan. Tip number 5, eat and drink enough to nourish and hydrate yourself well. During pregnancy, it takes approximately 500 extra calories to nourish your body to grow your baby. And postpartum, the same is true for breastfeeding. Breast milk isn't made from water, it's made from your blood. So being very well hydrated is important. Eat for nutrient density. lots of protein, a healthy balance of carbs and fat and fiber. Eat fruits and vegetables every day. Have healthy snacks that you can eat with one hand available in the fridge so that you can just grab it and put it in your nursing cart and sit down with your babe and have an easy snack. There's not a specific food or drink that you need to consume to increase your breast milk supply. In fact, many of the things that are recommended for increasing supply are completely unevidence-based. But what you do need is calories and you need hydration. So be sure to eat and drink and fuel yourself every day. If you're already breastfeeding and pumping enough times per day, but you're not getting enough milk, perhaps you're supplementing with donor milk or with formula, then there's some other things that we should look into. Supplements and herbs are something that are often recommended for people who are trying to increase their milk supply. And they can be helpful, but they're not a magic wand. I have breastfed 4 kids. If I start pumping today and my hormones are in good condition, I should be able to relactate eventually. But if I just start taking breast milk, vitamins, supplements, or teas, and I don't also stimulate my breast through breastfeeding or pumping, it's very unlikely that I will start lactating again. So think about it as a helper, but not a magic pill. I also recommend that before you take herbs or medications to increase your milk supply, that you have some lab work done to find out what's going on the inside of your body and finding out if there's any other micronutrient deficiencies or any glaringly obvious things that are interfering with your success. One of the most basic things that we can check is your prolactin. Prolactin is your milk-making hormone. You need your prolactin to be elevated while breastfeeding in order to make milk. At the end of your pregnancy, your prolactin should be upwards of sometimes 200. But when you're not pregnant, your prolactin is down to 6 to 24 on most lab ranges. And so you don't have to do anything while you're pregnant to increase your prolactin. That should happen on its own. But if it doesn't, we could test it and find out by having a base prolactin draw and then stimulating and have it drawn again very soon thereafter. You can see what the base and the raise in your prolactin are. And by assessing those two numbers, we can tell whether or not the mechanics on the physiology side are working for your breast milk production. If your prolactin is all the way down at pre-pregnancy levels, that's a red flag. And we should start looking to things that increase your prolactin levels. But if you test your prolactin and your prolactin is already very high, you need more stimulation, not more prolactin. You have enough prolactin. Lab testing can really help you to determine what is going on before deciding what type of treatment to put in place. A common supplement that was recommended for breastfeeding mothers for a very long time was fenugreek. And fenugreek is a common herb and seed used in Indian cuisine that many people consume daily. Fenugreek is an herb that was recommended for breastfeeding mothers for many years to help increase their milk supply. But now we've learned that people with gestational diabetes, thyroid problems, peanut allergies, or that already have high testosterone, fenugreek may not be the best option. Some other herbs that are commonly used today are things like goat's rue or moringa, both of which can positively impact many things but insulin resistance, and also why you should be mindful of taking herbs like those, including fenugreek, if you have diabetes, gestational diabetes, take any medications for diabetes. You should definitely talk to your care provider before starting any of those things, as all of those herbs can impact glucose and blood sugar. Tip number 7, trailing off of my last thought, is to have comprehensive lab work done. If you have been doing everything to raise your supply, you are breastfeeding your baby 8 to 12 times a day, you are using a pump, your flange is fit, you've been measured, and you have been taking herbs and not seeing any changes to your milk supply, you need to have some lab work done. A very common thing that impacts breastfeeding is your thyroid. Thyroid is something that many people don't have a problem with until they're postpartum and they're diagnosed with an issue for the first time. By correcting a malfunctioning thyroid, often we will have a bounce back of the milk supply in relation to correcting those values. So it's very important. Oftentimes when corrected, milk supply can rebound from having a low status when your hormones are balanced. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this video helpful. I believe that your baby was born for breastfeeding, and with education and support, you can accomplish your breastfeeding goals.